The thing that I think that I've realized over time is that you just have to put your head down and do the hard work to get through it. There's no advantage to complaining about you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Economic issues are causing you challenges. You just have to put your head down, do the hard work, and you'll get through it. You have no other choice.
What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. This podcast is sponsored by Berman Falk Hospitality Group, a design-driven furniture manufacturer who specializes in custom case goods and seating for hotel guest rooms. Today's guest is a 30-plus year veteran in the architecture and design industry. For 16 years, he was the SVP, Global Head of Architecture and Design at Hilton Hotels and Resorts. He recently started his own advisory lab to help push design innovation forward. He's a Platinum Circle Award winner in 2024. He's the founder of Traxworks Hospitality Collaborative. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Larry Traxler. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you, Dan. That was great.
I would also like everyone to know that you've also been a mentor to me over my nearly 3 decades in this industry, whether you realize it or not. Actually, you do realize it. And not just in the work stuff, but also having been on safari with you, which is one of your passions, which I know what we'll talk about. I brought the crappiest camera with an okay lens, but you are a magnificent photographer. And I was just able for a week to ask you, what's your f-stop setting? What shutter speed? What this? I didn't even have a viewfinder on my camera, but since then I've upgraded and now I've become like the unofficial team photographer for all my kids' sports. And I also, eagles or hawks will fly by and I run and get it, or bears. And I feel like I have this new skill set. So when everything shits the bed, I can just go out into the world and try and take photographs for people.
Yeah, the lack of viewfinder made it really hard to coach you because I didn't know what you were seeing. I didn't know how you were framing anything. So it's really hard to say, where your f-stop should be because I didn't know how close you were to the subject or how far out you were getting in terms of context. But in terms of being able to relax and photography does that for me as well. That's how I got through COVID. I did a backyard safari, and I have a whole lineup of amazing animals that I shot during COVID when I couldn't travel anywhere. I went from 300,000 miles a year down to 20,000 in 2020. And I shot chipmunks. I had chipmunk babies. I've got owls. I've got deer.
Mini fox. It's Mini,
Yeah,
right?
Mini,
Yeah, Mini.
Scooter. Yeah.
The whole family. Well, what that taught me, among many other things, photography in particular, is anyone can become good at anything given enough reps, right? Now, granted, there is a huge artistic and compositional factor to photography, but what I found for me is I love painting, I love drawing, I love writing, but I feel like painting, drawing, writing, there's like this hump to get over to actually start doing the work. Whereas with the camera, I found I could just go out there and take as many reps as I wanted, especially with all these digital memory cards. And the real trick, going through and editing out, which I think helped a tremendous amount, but it was a tremendously creative outlet that you gave me as a gift that I think will last me for the rest of my life. And it's so easy to get reps, right? You just have to get out and do it rather than like cleaning paintbrushes and getting canvases ready and gessoing boards and all this other stuff. So for that, I'm eternally grateful.
You started at the right time because I started with film, where it wasn't so easy, and you didn't have immediate feedback, and you had to spend time in the dark room, actually figuring out what you did and what you did right and what you did wrong. But a lot of times you had weeks, if not a month in between when you shot something and when you actually developed it. So I think when you learn in that world, maybe you're a lot more intentional about how many times you let the shutter go, and you start thinking about conserving some of that digital space. But you're right. I mean, anybody starting today, it's immediate gratification.
Yeah. Well, and also one of my favorite adages is the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago or today. Right. And I don't know. I find photography just so relaxing and focused, and the editing process actually is even better. And not even with changing a lot of the values or hues or contrast. It's just getting in and just getting the ones out that aren't in focus and just narrowing down. And that whole idea of iteration. And I think without leading you too much here, I think that idea of iteration and getting reps and finding that sweet spot, which is often really difficult to do in a vocation. Um, how do you define hospitality, and how do you think all those reps in your career arc, which is tremendous, how do you think you created your reps to become and positioned Hilton as like what arguably is one of the top hospitality companies in the world, and how are you carrying that forward?
Listen, I think that if you ask me to define hospitality through my lens, it's always as a creative, a creative leader in that space. And where my journey started off with, Jordan Mozer, it was all purely about creating and creating cool things that went into cool spaces. As I, progressed to HBA in Singapore and started really honing my focus not on architecture or spaces, be it food and beverage, venues, residences, movie sets, and started focusing purely on hospitality. It was about, what is hospitality through that lens was about, creating amazing, unforgettable places. I was doing work in India and China and, back before anybody was really signing international contracts in India and China. And then when I moved back to the States and looked at it through the lens of Ian Schrager, it was all about creating these amazing, unforgettable experiences, right? Like, if you went into the Hudson Hotel at 6 p.m. or you came into the Clift as the lights were dimming, you never forget that moment, and you feel like you're a celebrity, and you really feel like you've arrived at the right place. When I jumped ship from the creative side over to, I would say, more the conductor side with Hyatt, where I was leading teams of creatives and designers to do those same things. I would say that then my lens shifted to more of the business case. What are we trying to achieve in this location? Where are we building? Who's the customer? And how do we balance all of these conflicting needs with still creating a great space as someplace that's memorable? Moving into Hilton, that lens shifted again. It became like kind of macro view, 250 miles above the earth. And I started looking at how do you create brands? How do you create brands that resonate with people? How do we identify white space where we don't have existing brands or where we're trying to shoehorn our existing brands into things that just don't fit? And started looking at how do I leverage a portfolio of brands and creating those spaces and business case. So almost every time that I've progressed to a different stage of my career, there's been a new entry into this. And so it was kind of like learning to ride a bike, right? Like you start with just the creative piece, and then you think about the guest experience and the creative piece. And then you think about the business case of hospitality and how you still create amazing experiences and creative visions within that. And then you start layering in the brand piece. And is it the right brand for this location? Is it the right customer for this location? So every time it almost gets more and more complex. You're riding a unicycle, from the tricycle, and then you're suddenly you're just levitating and trying to figure out how all of these spinning plates keep spinning. And so I would say that hospitality is really defined in the most recent stage as what is the business case? Who is the user? What are we trying to create? What is the place? And how do we leverage or amplify that to its maximum revenue opportunity, its maximum experience opportunity, and really create something that's irreplaceable?
As I hear you say, it's finding that business case for the people who were there, the guests, the brand, the overall experience. I have this vision of like a Venn diagram, and it's always shifting, and you're trying to find that place where everything kind of intersects into the middle. I want to also share with the guests before we dig into that, or the listeners. Um, when you were on your unicycle at Jordan Mozer creating things, your next stop was HBA in Singapore. I just want everyone to know that my first job out of college, I worked for a guy named Bruce Jones, who's still, I'm not sure how he was involved in the Singapore HBA office, because he was building we were building a building up in Marin County. But every morning I had to get on the phone and call Singapore and say, hey, is Larry there? I want to patch Bruce through. And we'd say, good morning, hello. And then I'd patch you through. And that was like very formative. And I didn't get to meet you until you moved back to the US. And what was that, 2004, 3, 5, something in there, right?
97 to 99. So I moved back in 2000. Yeah.
2000. But I don't think I met you until in Los Angeles in 2003, 4, somewhere in there. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, I think I was, by that time I had moved on. I was at Hyatt. So I had gone through my Schrager days. I had, that was, 21 hours a day work and flying. I was commuting between New York and San Francisco at the time, and bouncing over to London and Paris every so often to meet with Philippe.
Wow. Okay. So finding this business case and being able to leverage and get all those 3 circles or 4 circles of the Venn diagram to kind of come together. And I love the spinning of the plate spinning metaphor as well, just to think about that. As you've taken your entire career arc to where you are now, what's most exciting about all the different irons on the fire that you have going with Traxworks, and what's really kind of lighting you up and getting you out of bed each morning as you are now?
I would say what I'm most excited about now is that I can truly say no to things. When you're at a large corporation, you can't say no to anything, and frequently as you move up the chain of command, you end up taking on more and more challenging projects that have a whole litany of reasons why they shouldn't succeed. And it's your job as a leader to clear the field in front of the design consultants and your team that's supporting this owner or this hotel opening. And you deal with all the issues that nobody else wants to deal with or can handle. Now I'm at that stage of my career where I can take on things that I really like, that I'm really passionate about. I can say no to those problem projects, the locations in the world that I wasn't too excited about working in, or where I had a really hard time finding a cultural connection or defining a narrative around that place. A lifestyle hotel in Saudi Arabia is a tough connection for me, just because my lens is that lifestyle hotels are about getting together and enjoying life and oftentimes enjoying food and
Having drinks.
yeah, and that doesn't, one of those legs of the stool is removed within the Saudi world. And quite honestly, that maybe that helps people through this current phase of hospitality where the socialization piece may not be defined by alcohol anymore, and it's more defined by creating other types of experiences. So it was a good learning opportunity, but it's still a tough connection, building a lifestyle hotel in the middle of the desert, which we were frequently tasked with. So, I think, to come all the way around, I was still on my tricycle at Jordan Mozer. And when
Oh, you weren't on the unicycle yet. You were the tricycle.
no. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One
So
other thing I want to interject on. I still have yet to meet Jordan Mozer. I think I texted with him or something on LinkedIn. I do want to meet him one of my next times in Chicago. But it is amazing like the pod, the seed pod that exploded there with you, Mike Sumi, Adam Lara,
Dwayne McEwen.
Dwayne, um, Jay, like such an amazing group of people that started there. And now there's this big diaspora. What do you think it was that got you, that Jordan taught you, or that group of people taught you and helped you kind of kick off the tricycle?
Well, first and foremost, it's starting every project with a narrative. What is the story? What is the creative vision behind the challenge, which is the project to build a restaurant, to do a movie set, to do a residence. I mean, that those challenges or that project always started with a narrative, and that narrative was frequently defined around a movie or a book or some sort of a creative obtuse connection that forced you to think in a different way every single time. And so, just the beginning of a project was an incredible creative release. We would stay up late. We'd, stay up until 2 in the morning thinking about what if this design circled around this notion. And that's how we made our connection. My first project with Jordan was in Matsuyama, Japan, straight out of college. And it was called Surf and Turf. And it was a Japanese anime concept. What if anime came to life within the restaurant? And so I was tasked with drawing compound curves and figuring out how to communicate to a Japanese contractor what it was that we were trying to achieve. But then I also got to fly over to Japan and spend, weeks and a month at a time on site, showing them how to break ceramic tiles to build to make mosaic walls and to do things that were outside of their usual construct, doing murals on the walls with the artists and doing special finishes. So I think that it was the beginning point with Jordan. It was always defined around a narrative, and this was 1990, before everybody was talking about starting with the narrative. But it was also the creative aspect that we would lose money almost every single project on design because we kept iterating and redrawing and asking new questions about why we're doing this and was it true to the narrative. But we made our money on building the actual furniture, the lighting, the mugs in the restaurant project that I mentioned in Matsuyama. We worked with glass blowers. We worked with metal foundries. We did sculpting of cast bronze.
And I just want to clarify for everyone, it wasn't just that you were working with them, like you were really getting your hands dirty and like experimenting with the blowing of the glass or welding things together or casting things. And I've heard you talk a little bit around that. And also Mike, Sumi and Dwayne, like and Adam, like there was all this idea. I almost get the vision of like a collegiate architecture studio, but with all the hot, dangerous, and sharp things to make stuff, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, we spent a lot of time in metal foundries. And yeah, at one period of time, all my forearm hair was gone because I was trying my hand at blowing glass. Eric Bladholm, who was teaching me, he still got his studio, Chicago Hot Glass. He had no hair on his body whatsoever, and it was purely from the heat of the furnace and the glass that he was around. But
Wow.
yeah, that does teach you something. I mean, I think one of my first formative moments while I was still in architecture school in Cincinnati before I started co-op, my one summer that I had free, that's Cincinnati's a 6-year co-op program. And so your freshman year, you have your only break in that 6-year journey. And then after your sophomore year, you start working every other quarter. So you're actually in the field, learning the craft, and then you come back to the creative side, or the academic side. My one summer off, I foolishly signed up to do framing for a residential contractor. So I was out, yes. But I learned, I mean, my dad's a mason, so I've always known how to build. He had me helping build, fireplaces and things in our backyard, and I hated him for it. But it was a great learning curve for me at the very beginning of my like high school life. But then in college, I learned framing and how buildings come together, and the electrical and the drywall overlay. And I think that everybody at Jordan's was curious. They were curious about the craft and the pieces that went into it. They were really inspired by the narrative and how that all came together. And the people that survived there, which a lot of people, I kept this great list of everybody that came in, and I had them. Mike Sumi and Dwayne both remember this. I had them gauged by how long they lasted as well. There were quite a few 1 day entries in, but I just wanted to document them because it was such a revolving door of massive burnout. And there were very few people that lasted beyond 3 years. I lasted, I think, 7 years. Mike was there 8 years. Dwayne was 5 years or something like that. But
Wow.
that was like the peak. Jeff Carlos lasted forever, but yeah, he was really in a different realm. But it was a great learning opportunity, and I think that it really set me up for success later on in life, because when I went to HBA, I started asking, what is the narrative? Why are we, what, I know we're building a hotel in Jodhpur, India, but what is the story behind this? And what is the craft? How are we inserting hand-carved elements that are readily available in that area? Or what other artisans or craftsmen are in this area that we can use to insert into this place to give it more cultural relevance and authenticity? So, straight out of the gate, in hospitality, I mean, we did one or two hotels with Jordan, but it was mostly food and beverage, movie sets, really, sort of creative white box stuff. But it was really when I went to Singapore and worked with HBA that I started getting into that hospitality space, and started applying the same challenges, right? What is the narrative? Where is the craft? How do we create cultural resonance? Where do we create authenticity, and how do we do that through the sense of place or the craftsman that we're building around?
Earlier in the conversation, and just in previous conversations that we've had, you've said that like hospitality is this place navigating the waters between an idea, the business case, and the people, the guests, and the people working there. You also said something that was really interesting earlier today, where it's, you find that in this new path that you're on, and actually somewhere earlier in your career arc, but it's really finding the bridge between all of those kind of competing, but also could be resonant ideas. So my question there, and I think you mentioned Hyatt, but where in your career did you first realize that like that bridge is actually the entire job, or like a whole job and a real focus? Like, because that really the hardest part. And it's like you have all this practical knowledge and hands-on experience, but it's also now, you did it at tremendous scale with Hilton. I remember calling you and saying, hey, what's going on with this project? And you're like, Dan, I have like 4,300 projects. I have no freaking idea what you're talking about. Let's go get a beer somewhere. But I have no idea. But when did you realize that that bridge is a whole job in and of itself?
Yeah, I think that that's part of the learning curve, and jumping from the purely creative side of being in a design studio, an architectural studio, or a design studio, and coming over to, we used to call it the dark side, right? If you're coming over to the developer side or the brand side, you're going to the dark side. And in a lot of ways, creatives think that that's the part where you're selling out. But I found that it was incredibly liberating to come away from a design studio and then actually have some ability to control the end destiny of what it is that you're designing. When you're on the design side, it's really hard when you don't control the money, you don't control the owner developer, you don't control the operator side. And when I went to Schrager, that was the first time that I actually got to be this puppet master, where we actually have development money and we get to decide where it goes. And we actually control the operational side. And we can say, housekeeping, this is how you will work, or bartenders, this is how we're designing the space. Is that good? And get their feedback. But when you're purely in a design studio, you don't often have the ability to be that bridge, to be able to be in the room and talk to everybody and figure out, how do you make this crazy idea successful? How do you make this challenging hotel location successful? How do you create that bridge between place and guest? And it's not until you have those additional pieces where you can start bridging the gap between operations, the development budget, the guests, and understanding who the guests are. I think that a lot of design studios in the past have not had the ability to do that. Now with the tools that are available, and you know um, mass data availability, and the ability to search through and filter through and find out more about things, they can start controlling their own destiny a little bit more. But you don't own that piece of developer side. You often don't know the operator side and how it's going to be managed. That's really difficult. And then, so that bridge piece, I think, really came about at Schrager. And then when I moved on to Hyatt, we managed so many of our properties that I really had my finger on the pulse of the operations side. I knew the budgets that were coming in. I could build the team that I thought would be ideal for a project in Trinidad or in Curacao. And I didn't have to, sort of work with whoever was already the architect of record on that project. We could actually build the team. And so in a lot of ways, I use the metaphor of being a bridge, but I also, when I'm talking to new people that are coming over from the creative side into the owner, developer, brand side, I also use the metaphor of being a conductor. I know may know how to play the cello, you may know how to play the flute, and you may know how to play all these different instruments. You may be amazing at those, but your new job is not to do that. Your new job is to be the conductor, and you have to create a symphony with the people that you're assembled in front of you. And so it's creating the symphony is really sort of the parallel to being the bridge between all of those. And I think that really in my current role, the bridge, the conductor, whatever that is, that's part of the reason why I called my new business a collaborative, because it is truly an assemblage of all these great people that do really cool things on their own, but how do you bring them together to create a symphony?
100%. And as you're saying that, I'm having a vision of like Bob Ross's palette or some famous painter's palette, but on the palette are the people, right? And it's how do you get that titanium white and the cerulean blue all to come together into this new thing. I don't know if I can attribute this story to you, but it's about Ian Schrager. It could have come from you. It could have come. I've known a bunch of other people, and he's also designed collections for Didon and the like. So it could have come from anywhere. But speaking of opening a project at the last, and actually, I'm just going to share this story and then tell me if it might have been from you, or if not, what it means about what made Schrager so special. But I'm envisioning it's the end of a project. Everything is almost delivered, but there's like a few bits and bobs and odd pieces that are missing, like a toilet paper holder or a chandelier. And in that last 11th hour, they'd be like, hey, Ian, we need a toilet paper holder or a chandelier or something that wasn't thought of. And he puts his hands back in his head and gets like a piece of paper and sketches something really fast. And then it gets handed off to someone, and then it gets made, and then it winds up in however many guest rooms. Is that from you? And
No, no.
but does it make sense? Is that does it sound like it could be real?
So I love Ian, and he's a visionary. He's a creative genius in terms of the experience. But I think I've never seen him draw. I've only experienced him saying, "Nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. Nope." he knows it when he sees it, and we're drawing furiously. We're drawing and we're sketching new ideas, putting it in front of, nope, that's not it. And frequently, he'll use, curse words, and like, why are we taking so long with this? I think he surrounds himself with people that can do that.
So kind of like a Rick Rubin, right? He
Yeah,
doesn't play
yeah,
any instruments, but he knows it when he sees it and feels it. And he's so
absolutely,
singular in his vision that when you hit that frequency, he's like, yes, that's it.
absolutely.
And I just remember that I know you mentioned the Clift earlier. That was a really important property in San Francisco and in the portfolio of Four Seasons. And so many great operators had gone through that, Stan Bromley included, who seemed to come up on like every single podcast recently that I'm talking about as a mentor of mine. Um, when you look at that canvas you were given for the Clift and how transformative it was, not just for in San Francisco, but I think also for hospitality and hospitality design in a whole. Where was that on your stepping stone to, and what did you take away from opening that to where you are now in this Traxworks collaborative?
I'll tell you, there were a lot of distractions when I was working on the Clift. Ian was it was making his foray over into London, so St. Martin's and Sanderson. There were a lot of trips to London. Philippe was busy over there as well. London was a lot more shiny than San Francisco, and I had probably an unheard of amount of autonomy in any Schrager context because I was out on the West Coast, and there were a lot of people in Europe trying to make sure that those properties really shined. The first properties outside of the U.S., first property in London, a really discerning crowd. So it gave me a lot of freedom in San Francisco. Ian probably showed up a grand total of 4 times before the opening, which was amazing because he can be a little, with his creative visions, he can be a little disruptive and change his mind, which means a lot of changes. Even having Philippe Stark out on a relatively rare basis, we were able to take some original literally napkin sketches that I'm sure somebody still has somewhere, which were the vision for the lobby, the vision for the big chair, with the backdrop of the fireplace, the vision for the redwood room, and it stayed very pure to that original vision because they kept out of it. We weren't being second guessed. We were actually just implementing. And I was literally flying over to Paris and meeting with the people doing the mirrored cut glass that went up on the back bar. I was working through every stone detail, every stone joint in the lobby. We worked through in painful detail. We knew exactly where every light fixture was, every sprinkler. You don't often, and that was probably the last time ever that I only had one project. I literally had one project, and I didn't have to sort of juggle between projects at different stages and thinking about things that were sometimes distracting. I lived on site 11 days, and I'd fly back home to see Jerry 3 days and then fly back out. I also had the beauty of being able to living on site on the property. I was able to fix some contractor related issues that plant construction who was doing the build out. They're amazing. I mean, they left the Clift and they went to the Prada showroom in LA. They were incredibly talented, but sometimes they would get a mirror joint or something misaligned within a guest room, and they said, "Yeah, we're not going to fix that. It's within our tolerances." And so there was this magic hammer that would come out when nobody else was on site, and oops, the mirror would get broken somehow, and they would have to come back and replace it and get the joints right. So, I learned that, being unwavering and focused on one property, it can make you manic, but you're really proud in the end with how everything just sort of came together.
Because you can go so deep into every single detail where when you fast forward to the 4,300 or however many at Hilton, you just didn't have the ability to tell Dan what was going on with that project. Um, but actually, I also realized I had a total brain fart on this whole sketching thing. It wasn't Ian, it was Philippe. Philippe at the end of it. Now, does that make sense for him doing the sketching and then passing it? Okay. But that wasn't attributed to you. That was just from someone else working with Philippe.
Probably because I had the unique grace of not seeing Philippe the beginning, the model rooms, and the end. That was literally his only presence out there. I worked with Bruno Barione from his studio mostly, and so Bruno and I are still good friends. We were thrown into the fire or into the proverbial deep end together to make it work. So I worked with him a lot more than I did Philippe.
I also want to paint a picture for everyone as far as going from Hyatt. Well, I would say HBA. Schrager, you were going domestic travel mostly, maybe to Paris every once in a while, but you mentioned flying 300,000 miles a year. What's your lifetime mileage tally across all airlines these days, approximately?
Sing Air, United, American, and Qatar. It's probably around 9 million.
Oh my God. Okay. So I just want to do, I'm not
8 million, 8.5 million. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to do some quick math for everyone to see what that means. And this does not count getting to the airport and waiting, but 8.5 million divided by, let's just say 500 miles an hour. That's 17,000 hours divided by 24, 708 divided by 365. That's 2 years in a pressurized tube, not counting getting to and from the airport, right?
Yeah. Well, until very recently, that was great time to concentrate, to think quietly, to really sort of write or draw. But now that everybody expects you to be omnipresent and always connected, it's probably a little bit less productive. But those were some really amazing opportunities to focus. And I think that I also find that I think creatively. I also sleep really well on planes, but I think creatively in a sort of a constrained space where I don't have the ability to get distracted or walk around and do other things. So out of that 2 years, I'm hoping that about a year of that was really positive creative time as well. Some of it was just watching movies and sleeping, but
I think I'm about a third of your progress there. I think I'm about almost 3 million miles. But what I do miss, because since 2019, I haven't had to go to factories every 5 seconds. But I do miss that solitary, quiet focus time. It allowed me to be incredibly creative. And I feel like maybe I need to build a replica of a fuselage that I can just lock myself in. At one point during COVID, I remember playing airplane noises. Like you could hear the carts rattling and the sound of the jets in the air, but it helped me focus. So I feel like I need to dust that off.
it sounds like detox more than anything. I don't know, focus or detox.
Maybe it's both. Although there is a drink cart on a plane, so I don't know if it's detox.
Hey, everybody. We've been doing this podcast for over 3 years now. And one of the themes that consistently comes up is sustainability. And I'm just really proud to announce that our sponsor, Berman Falk Hospitality Group, is the first within our hospitality industry to switch to sustainable and recyclable packaging, eliminating the use of styrofoam. Please check out their impact page in the show notes for more info.
Okay, so Mozer, Schrager, I'm skipping over things. Hyatt, somewhat ramping up, and then really at scale with Hilton. What is the biggest lesson you learned from being that bridge at Hilton that now you're taking into Traxworks?
I had a really interesting conversation yesterday with an ex Hilton colleague who is now running Lux Collective, and they happen to have a portfolio of properties in Rwanda, the UAE, Europe, Mauritius. They're based in Mauritius, and they're talking through their portfolio and where their pipeline is. And I think the thing that I pulled away from Hilton that is most valuable is the ability to quickly understand place, the location, how the operational constructs change from when you're going from, let's say, Saudi to Japan or to Thailand. Because I had um, boots on the ground, I spent time in all of those places. I think I'm at 102 two countries now. Um, and I don't use that lightly. I have to have been off of a plane, out of an airport, and had a meal to count it as a visit. So there are a lot more countries where I just flew in, had meetings, and flew back out without having a meal that I wouldn't count as one of those 102. But having that cultural context of what the competition is, what is happening in terms of those unique locations, cities, or countries, and quickly being able to flip in my head how things need to be designed differently, how the guest room expectations are different, how the back of house operational um, uh, structure is different within those countries. I know that it's all in my head. So it allows me to bounce quickly from island resort to mountain resort or from urban convention center property to a small boutique hotel in Bentonville, Arkansas, or Bentonville, yeah, Arkansas. So being able to move and quickly navigate between those and understand, how things have to be designed differently. I would say that that's what Hilton in 16 years of bouncing around between various countries. I mean, when I left in 2025, we opened the last 2 years, we opened 1,000 hotels a year.
Can't even get my head around that.
But working on everything, and literally my lens changed from the beginning when Blackstone bought Hilton International and merged us with Hilton Domestic. We had to sort of understand the whole global context, but we only had 8 brands at that time. Only 4 of them were essentially outside of the U.S. So it was pretty easy at that point in time navigating those waters. But over time, as we started ramping up the opening, the pipeline, and then the number of hotels that were opening each year, and the number of brands that we were working on, that's where it really started getting complex, and you had to quickly navigate that switch between brand, location, program, and budget, speed of delivery, all of that stuff. It sort of becomes just sort of second nature when that's all you do for 16 years. So, like that repetition piece that you were talking about.
Yeah, so you get all those reps. I call it like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, I call it getting off the moving sidewalk. But I don't know if that's a good metaphor, because a moving sidewalk is actually kind of slow. You were being flung around the earth at over 500 miles an hour, probably even arguably faster if you factor in digital communication. Now that you're a lab of one, like you're a lab of your own,
hmm
I'm curious to say, because you've built also an awesome team at Hilton, right? And a leader at Hilton. Who are you becoming now that you're a lab, like the org chart's gone and it's like, it's you and this palette of people? Who are you becoming now? Like and how are you taking that into the future?
Well, I think that I've entered into this space of having to be my own IT, my own accounts payable, my own website creator, my own AI consultant, and thinking about all of this stuff. So I'm sort of eating all of this stuff up, trying to figure out. I just launched Traxworks in mid-January, January 10th to be exact, and January 11th I already had my first project. Tim McEnany, who was the GM of the Clift, called me day one and said, "Hey, you're free. I have a project down here in Dallas. Why don't you jump on this with me?" Yeah, and I'm working on it with Dwayne. So Dwayne McEwen. So it's full circle all the way back to JMA. Actually, I guess the moral of that story is be nice to everybody that you're working with and don't be a jerk. So it will come about. But I would say that right now what I'm really enjoying is being this sponge, trying to soak up everything. And I've always had this crazy curiosity. I'm always thinking about innovation and how we can flip a paradigm switch on a brand, and how we can make it relevant or even more relevant, how we can make it more profitable, how we can insert some new technology into a hotel that would help enable guest loyalty or operational excellence or something like that. And so now I'm going through this like AI immersion and trying to understand what the future of the design world will be, what the future of hospitality will be. And there's all these incredible new tools out there that I knew nothing about because I was too busy at Hilton. Although we did like 2 or 3 workshops on AI, and I tried to get everybody enthused about this instead of scared. But mostly we were too busy to deal with it. Now I have time to actually focus on this, and so I'm immersed in Claude and Gemini and Midjourney, and playing around with them as creative tools, with narrative tools, with writing proposals quickly. I mean, it's amazing how quickly you can write a proposal now. Uh, there's all of these incredible new tools. It's almost like I've got all these new things like glass blowers and metal foundries and things like that, except for it all lives in the digital space.
Well, and I think it also shortens your path to connecting all those artisans and people on your palette that you've met over the years into and plug them into projects that are going on, right? In that symphony conducting. My take on AI, I used to have this fear, I don't know, a couple of years ago that it was going to take over everything and it's Skynet. But after I've been immersing myself and using it and seeing it as a tool, and this could be hubris or I could just be dumb here, but I think everyone on Earth interacts with information and the world around them and nature and differently from how they communicate. Are they more visual? Are they more written? Are they more is or AURAL is like through listeners, talkers. But I think what I found is I think that the promise of AI is almost like a bridge, to use your metaphor again, to have everyone create this interface that works for how they interact with the world. And it's almost like throwing gasoline on the creative process or a business process where everyone is going to be able to turn that dial to 11. What's your take so far in your immersion of the new entrepreneur?
Listen, I think that it's like going from film photography to digital. It allows you to iterate so much faster. It enables progress at a much more rapid pace. I love the idea of how we're suddenly able to take things that are digital and insert them into an architectural fabric, and stretch it or compress it to quickly make it more democratized and affordable. I think that AI is no, you shouldn't be afraid of it, because your only other option is extinction. You either get on board, or you will find a nice quiet place somewhere to live out your life, because you won't exist in this space anymore. I think that creatively it is a toolkit, and it's a really amazing toolkit that people should jump on board and figure out how it applies to their use case or their strengths, and then just sort of go on the ride and figure out where you land with it. It is. I think that the creatives will still be massive curators. They're necessary. Machine learning can't tell whether this looks good or balanced, or whether it is appropriate for context until you tell it. Soon, people will start creating their own AI worlds within their studios, and I know the big boys are already looking at how they create their own their own ecosystem within the AI world and creating their own bots that will leverage all of the history that they've had in their firm and sort of start developing taste based on prior examples, but it doesn't have the ability to anticipate what the future is. And I think that's where humans are necessary. We're the curatorial good tastemakers in that equation that are essential.
I think you learn that by singeing off your arm hairs or wearing off the nubs of your fingers, like laying mortar and brick, and just figuring out the constraints of the built environment that I don't know if AI, I don't know how well this will age, but I don't know if AI like will ever have that even with humanoid robots.
Mhm.
And now I'm getting in way over my skis to talk about this, but one interesting thing is you started with Jordan in 1990. So nor am I an economist, but basically you started in 90. That means there was a big recession in 91, 98, 2001, 2008, 2020. I don't know if I feel like our world is in a bit of a recession now in the hospitality design and hotel development space right now, but going through those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different cycles, what's your biggest takeaway and experience, and how can you bring that to what lays ahead for Traxworks and you?
Well, listen, I think almost every single time that I made a shift in my career, it was right around a major economic downturn. So when I moved to Chicago from Cincinnati after graduating with no job, I had other job offers from my co-op time, but I didn't want to stay in Cincinnati. I wanted to move to Chicago. I moved to Chicago the day that Skidmore laid off like 300 architects. And I'm like, oh shit, now what do I do? So of course I bartended and then found my way over to Jordan Mozer's. When I moved to Singapore, I think I was there for a grand total of about 2 weeks before the Asian financial crisis hit. When I moved back to the U.S., just finished the Clift, and then 9/11 hit, and I lived 2 blocks south of the World Trade Center. Um, when I jumped ship to Hyatt, another bumpy period of economic crisis in the U.S. In 2008, when I was talking to Hilton and Chris Nassetta about jumping from Hyatt, where I was very comfortable and had a great relationship with the Pritzkers. We happened to have a pretty major downturn right after Blackstone invested $56 billion in merging Hilton International and Hilton Domestic. So my shifts in my career have always happened at the time of a point of duress, whether it be economic or political. The thing that I think that I've realized over time is that you just have to put your head down and do the hard work to get through it. There's no advantage to complaining about you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Economic issues are causing you challenges. You just have to put your head down, do the hard work, and you'll get through it. You have no other choice.
Yeah.
And I think that resilience is something that maybe everybody needs to take a harder look at and focus on as we talk about AI and the challenges that are happening in the current financial market. There's always some place that is booming or that is rising. Just in my little foray in Traxworks, Saudi, I had two big projects that were poised in Saudi and the UAE. As soon as bombs started dropping, they all shifted.
Yeah, totally.
They didn't stop. They just moved to the US. And so, that's even closer to home. So there's opportunities in Miami and Atlanta and in Colorado now. And that same money that was over there ready to do a project over there are now pivoting. And suddenly we have the deeper experience here because we know how to get projects done here. So it almost leveraged our opportunity in those respects. But there's always some place in the world that's booming. There's always some place or something that's happening that is an opportunity. And I think that we really have to widen our lens in terms of what we think about as traditional hospitality, because hospitality is no longer just a hotel. It's about placemaking. It's stretched into branded resi. It's stretched into apartments. It's stretched into healthcare and thinking about what that hospitality or that guest centric lens is for healthcare. Even to space, right? I mean, I'm sure that you were going to bring this up at some point in time, but that was a pretty wide stretch when Voyager came to us and said, "Can you help us with the human-centric piece of Starlab and what that means to be in low Earth orbital? What are the human-centric touch points that you think about within a hotel that have application to space?" When you start thinking about hospitality bridging all of those, we have an immense amount of opportunity that is either parallel or tangent, that is running in retail and resi. I think that people stay with us as guests in hotels, and therefore we have a closer opportunity to build that connection. But then when we start thinking about how that knowledge of how people use and live in spaces, that we can expand that to almost anything.
Again, I'm going to bring back your bridge metaphor. And despite the fact that you've worked at these really big corporations, well, from Jordan smaller to HBA bigger to, you keep going. Some people think that being an entrepreneur is starting a company and I don't know, having a startup culture, starting your own company where you, like you said, you're the chef, the cook, the bottle washer, the bookkeeper, all these things, which you're doing now. But I think that there's a tension between your career path, or maybe not a tension, but it's illuminating in that I think that in spite of changing either just before or just after all of these big crises, financial crises or areas of upheaval, you've been you've been an entrepreneur that whole time, right? Because what you're really doing is building that bridge. I always say, like, entrepreneurs are really good at having a vision and then planting that next stepstone to get to that vision. Your metaphor is a bridge, so we'll just go with the bridge, but it's almost you've been building this bridge out into the unknown and navigating it. And to personalize it as well, I remember in 98, I would call you in the morning until long-term capital management blew up, and then I got laid off. And then I started a company August 28th, 2001, my first company, 2 weeks before September 11th happened. You were in New York for September 11th. But there's always this way of like waiting for someone to show you the path. I mean, that can work. But really what I think what I've noticed about you, and you're really just kind of like hammering it home right now, is you, even though you've worked at all these huge companies, you've always been intentional about like what's next and laying that next girder on the bridge into the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, a little bit of it is ADHD. I think I get bored quickly, and I'm always thinking about, what's next. Even with 4,000 hotels in the pipeline and, 25 brands, I'm thinking about what is next or how do we make it better. I do get bored quickly, and I'm never sort of happy with what the end product is. Every new project is an opportunity to do better, to refine something. But within the organizations that I'm in, I'm always thinking about, how do we make this faster? How do we make it better? How do we create more fluidly, or how do we bridge a gap with our owners or our guests in a way that makes the work that we're doing, because we're all putting in hard work, but how does it make it more impactful, make it more profitable for the owners, or make it a better stay for the guests? I think thinking about that all the time is sort of just in our nature, and it's in a lot of the people that are in our industry. We're always asking about what is next. How do we make it better? And it's those people that have a fear of the future that holds them back, right? And it prevents them. Sometimes you just have to jump off the bridge and you leap into that entrepreneurial into those waters, and you regain that. I would say that I'm feel like I'm a little bit at that stage. I don't think that they could have asked me to open. I mean, if we were asked to open 1,200 hotels, I would have been like, okay, we'll figure that out, in 1 year. So we'll figure it out. We need to hire here, here, and here. We need to launch another brand, and we'll do this. So you can always you can figure that out. But I think that in this period of my career trajectory, I'm most enthused about spending more time now, going back to my Schrager days when I was working on, one, two, or three projects at a time. And I can really get into the details and the weeds and start working to correct or create some opportunities around issues that everybody's complaining about in hospitality. And there's a lot of recurring issues that keep surfacing, and I think that we can do better. We have to do better with less. We have, financing's tough, and we have operational labor costs are high. So how do we create a set of tools that enables us to still do better even with those challenges?
What do you find is the most recurring issue or challenge within hospitality right now? Like you said, there's a lot of them, but like if one were to bubble to the top, what do you think it is?
Everything looks the same. If I put up 15 images of a lifestyle hotel right now, and challenged you with telling me what brand that is, you would have a really hard time unless I cherry picked very specific hotels within a very specific portfolio. I think the sameness, we used to call it the Instagram moment, or the Pinterest board that creates the sameness. And now it's just about all of these, I think there's a lot of people that are chasing this idea of luxury, the idea of lifestyle, and they're looking at past examples and they're just replicating. And that's creating problems from a guest perspective. Is it relevant to place? Is it relevant to why I'm there? A luxury hotel in a mountain resort shouldn't look the same as it does at a beach. And I think the sameness is starting to create a race to the bottom that we've seen in the airline industry, and they're trying really hard to maintain any loyalty, any sense of loyalty within their customer set now.
Just before you gave that answer, I was writing down a question that I wanted to ask, but I think you may have answered it, which is, obvious you're working at Hilton, Fortune 500, there's a sense of security and like a balance sheet and all this like fortress type metaphors to it. And now I think I was going to ask you, like, what's the freedom you're walking toward now at Traxworks? And I think you might have answered it in the sense that you're working on fewer things, going deeper, but also elevating or pulling back, getting escape velocity, bringing the space metaphor from sameness. Does that,
Yeah.
a bad interviewing question or style? You've never answered the question you're asking, but like, what's the freedom you're walking towards now, or building that girder out to?
I think I might have told you that we just spent a month in Europe, and we've had the luxury of having pied-à-terres in Paris, Rome, London, Barcelona, and Cannes. So I can work remotely. I can work from 3 p.m. until 7 p.m. CET time, and get everything done that I need to do, and then actually go to museums, go to restaurants, start absorbing again instead of just racing from point A to point B. This year, we're going to spend a month in Europe, a month in Africa, almost a month between the Arctic Circle and Iceland. This is all in effort, I think, to gain my life back, to gain some social aspects of my life that I sort of gave up in order to succeed in the sort of high pitched race of what a corporate environment requires, but also to gain some perspective on what people are doing in different locations around the world, to figure out how that applies to what it is that we're doing, either here in the U.S. Projects I'm working on, projects in Morocco and Africa and the UAE, but some 2 or 3 of the projects are here in the States now. And how do we start taking those lessons from Rome, Paris, from Norway, from Iceland, and applying them to what it is that we're doing here? What are they doing better than we are? How are they solving some of the labor issues? Because a lot of the challenges that we have in the U.S. are not unique to the U.S. Japan's suffering from the same labor shortage and increasing material costs.
Japan is fucking awesome. Even with all those issues, awesome. It is
Well,
just,
their service culture is incredible. I
yeah,
mean, Japan, Thailand, I mean, there's not many places on this planet that have such a deeply embedded culture of service where they genuinely care about everything. It is so easy to build there.
yeah. But Thailand, you could argue that like they have a lower labor cost. Japan, like labor is on par with what we got going on here. And it's still awesome despite all those constraints and labor shortages. And maybe time for another podcast in the future. But when you were talking about that anime restaurant in the beginning of our conversation and working with all the carpenters and everything, I have these guys on my like Instagram feed or Japanese carpenters, and I am just mesmerized by the precision, the passion, just how their planers are working, how they sand things, the joinery. It is like amazing. I could turn around and 3 hours goes by just watching these guys make shit. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
You're 4 or 5 months into Traxworks, right? So you're an overnight success after 30 something years grinding away every single day. If one thing got easier for you, what would steepen the trajectory of what's next for Traxworks?
I mean, you got to kiss a lot of frogs when you're running your own business, right? I would say I have a lot of conversations, and I recognize that 10 minutes in, the folks that I'm talking to have a different priority or end goal in mind. They may also have a long-term vision, but they're not able to capitalize anything for a year or two, and that's really hard to. I may be fully on board with their wellness vision or their notion of where they want to go. But they're at least 2 years out before they can start paying anybody. And I love passion projects, but when you're alone and just starting your business, you have to have some money coming in the door. So I would say that that finding the right owners who already have a track record of knowing what they want to do, and I'm not entering into the earliest stage of their path. Somebody who wants to get better, somebody who's already got an amazing small portfolio of safari lodges or whatever those may be, and then I can come on board and just take it to the next level or make their pipeline that much better. That's truly where I think that I'm looking at this point. And I don't have to have a lot. I want, as we talked about, I want 4 or 5 good projects to focus on, and that's it. And I think I may be getting close to full, and then I don't have to kiss any more frogs for a while.
And then Jerry will have a sense of relief because you'll be out of the house and going to visit sites, right? Because she was used to you traveling all the time, and now you're together all the time.
Yes, that's hurtful, but yes. But I think that I think on the positive side, I may be spending more time in Africa on work, which would please her to no end because she's been trying to talk me into buying a place in Cape Town forever.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
If I were one of those owner developers who have more than just an idea where it's actually like gaining momentum, how would I connect with you? How would I get in touch? And how could I tap into your palette of people and experience?
I think I mentioned that we built a website, Traxworks Hospitality Collaborative. I also check in on LinkedIn. I get notifications. I go in. I'm a bit of a nut. I try to clean out my inbox at the end of every day, whether it be LinkedIn or emails. So Yeah, email or LinkedIn, I think are both great resources. My website sort of lays out what it is that I'm trying to achieve, and there's a little ability to send me a note through the website, and I'm getting to the point where 5 months in now, I'm gonna have to go through and rewrite the website and create some content to keep people coming back. I've watched my visitors start dropping, so maybe this is good timing for
Well,
that.
hopefully this will give you a boost. And like I say to all the guests, like feel free to clip and cut and do whatever you want and stick it. You've said some great things here to just really highlight your worldview. And I'm just excited that you've been such an incredible part of my career journey and made connections and pulled me off of that palette and stuck me in places and also asked me for recommendations for humans to put onto that palette as well. So, and I think that really lights me up, lights you up. So whatever I can do to help, obviously, and hopefully there'll be another safari in our near future. Larry, this is just the beginning. Thank you. I appreciate you. You're the best.
Thank you so much. It was great spending time with you.
Yeah. And thank you to all of our listeners, because without you, I wouldn't be here hounding Larry for years to be on this. And I'm glad it finally happened. No, but seriously, you've been such an important part of my career trajectory and just also a friend over the years and a confidant. And I appreciate you. I appreciate Jerry. I cannot wait to see what the future holds for you and is delivering to you. So thank you for building bridges. Thank you to all of our listeners. We'll catch you next time.